the Enchantress of Verse. In the cradle of nature, where sunlight dances through leaves and shadows whisper tales of old, there stood a forest, untamed and alive, pulsing with an ethereal magic that hummed softly in the air. In the heart of this verdant wonderland, tucked away in an alcove of towering pines and weeping willows, stood a humble, secluded hut, unassuming to the careless eye. Inhabiting this quaint dwelling was not a common forester, but a being as magical as the woods that cradled her. The Enchantress. As lithe as a doe, with eyes as clear as a mountain spring and hair as wild as the forest vines, she was an echo of the natural world that held her. Hers was a spirit entwined with the ancient roots of the forest, an enchantment that ran as deep as the oldest oak. It was here, among chirping crickets and whispering leaves, the enchantress wove her magic, a magic not wrought from wands or ancient grimoires, but spun from the loom of words, the art of poetry. With her verses, she lulled babbling brooks to sleep, whispered the sun to rise, and sung the moon from its slumber. Her words were the heartbeat of the forest, a mystical cadence that resonated in the rustling leaves and echoed in the hooting of the owls. From an outsider's view, it might have seemed the enchantress had all she desired. The harmony of nature was her song, the earth her kin, and the poetry her magic. Yet beneath the tranquil surface of her life, like an undercurrent in a peaceful river, ran a quiet yearning, a longing. Despite her oneness with the forest, there was a part of her heart, much like a forgotten corner of a well-tended garden, that remained barren and untouched. In her solitude, she yearned for a connection of a different kind, a companionship not bound by her enchantments, a family that was not summoned by her spells. She longed for love, as deep and vast as the forest she inhabited, a love that would bloom amidst her solitude and lighten the chambers of her heart. Thus, the forest bore silent witness to the enchantress's concealed desire, a secret longing whispered only to the listening ears of the rustling leaves and the glistening moon. As the sun set and the nocturnal choir began their melody, the enchantress gazed at the star-studded sky, her heart aching with a silent plea echoed only by her magical verses. In the heart of the forest, beneath a canopy of dreams and desires, began the tale of the enchantress, a tale of magic, longing, and an eternal quest for love. Chapter 1. Elegy of Solitude. In the silken silence of dawn, the enchantress rose. The forest awoke with her, birds harmonizing their songs with the first rays of light, wind tenderly stroking the lush foliage as it danced through the trees. The day began with the forest's symphony, the overture of another day in this magical dwelling. As the golden orb rose higher, the enchantress ventured out, her bare feet treading on the earth, her fingers grazing the dew-kissed leaves. The forest greeted her warmly, birds chirping in chorus, squirrels scampering in her path, flowers blooming in her wake. Her heart brimmed with love for these creatures, her only family, yet within its silent chambers echoed an elegy of solitude. Amidst this bustling life, the enchantress was alone, untouched by a companion's warmth, a family's chatter, a lover's touch. She reached a clearing, the heart of the forest where an ancient tree stood. It was her sanctuary, a cathedral of nature where she spun her magic. With a sigh, she seated herself beneath the gnarled branches, her eyes closed, her heart open. Poetry spilled from her lips, a cascading waterfall of words. It was a hymn of healing, a sonnet of solace. Her verses wove a spell, their rhythm resonating with the forest's heart. The forest responded, the wind calmed, the birds quieted, and the flowers turned their heads, their vibrant faces basking in her incantation. Her poetry did more than soothe the forest's aches. It mirrored her own solitude. Her verses were raw and unguarded, revealing the depths of her longing. Her words echoed in the hollowness of her heart, resonating with a silent yearning for a love she was yet to discover. Her enchantments gave her joy, yet they also reflected her loneliness. The creatures of the forest were her cherished kin, yet they couldn't fill the void of companionship. Each verse she wove, each spell she cast, was a stark reminder of what she yearned for: a partner, a confidant, a family. As twilight draped its velvet cloak over the forest, she returned to her hut, her heart heavy with the day's revelations. She gazed at the glimmering moon, its silvery light casting long shadows that seemed to echo her solitude. Her heart whispered to the moon, longing for a day when her poetry would be an anthem of love and companionship, not an elegy of solitude. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of the ancient trees and the moon's comforting glow, the enchantress returned to her dwelling, her poetry lingering in the wind. The elegy of her solitude was etched into the heart of the forest, waiting to be replaced by a sonnet of shared love, a sonnet yet unwritten. Chapter 2. Metaphors of the Moon. As dusk surrendered to the midnight hues, the enchantress found herself beneath the celestial tapestry, gazing at the moon, her confidant, her muse. She poured her thoughts into the silent expanse, her heart whispering to the lone celestial sentinel. A conversation only the forest bore witness to, where the rustling leaves served as a muted audience to her quiet yearning. In the serenity of her solitude, she began her nightly ritual. With gentle fingertips, she touched the cool surface of the silver basin filled with clear water. Slowly, she started to hum, her melody intertwining with the moonlit night. As the vibrations from her voice met the water, it began to mimic the shimmering surface of the moon. Her voice rose, the melody shifting from a hum to a chant. She began to weave her thoughts into words, a fabric of desires and dreams spun with the silvery thread of moonlight. Each word resonated with the yearning in her heart, each verse a manifestation of her hopes. "I speak to thee, my lunar guide," she began, her voice echoing softly through the forest. "My heart seeks what's been denied, a partner's touch, a family's pride." The verses flowed, a rhythmic cascade of longing and hope. Her enchantment was potent, her words powerful. They swirled around her, glowing in the moonlight, the metaphorical poetry of her desires given form. Through her enchantment, the readers catch a glimpse of the power she wielded. There was no grandeur in her display, no dramatic surge of magic. Instead, her strength lay in the subtlety, the raw emotions that seeped into her words, her unadorned yearning for love and family. Her poetry, much like the moon, reflected her grace and power. In every verse that she whispered into the night, the enchantress painted a picture of her dreams, a mosaic of longing and hope. She asked for companionship that understood her soul's depth, love that transcended the ordinary, and a family that was more than a consequence of her spells. As her words dissipated into the night, she felt a wave of serenity wash over her. The moon seemed to shimmer a little brighter, almost as if acknowledging her plea. Despite the heavy yearning in her heart, the enchantress felt a sense of peace. Her words had been spoken, her desires sent out into the universe. With a final glance at the moon, she retreated into her hut, the echo of her dreams still resonating in the quiet forest. Her power was a promise to herself, a vow to not let her solitude define her, a pledge to seek what her heart truly desired. For the moon and the forest had heard her pleas, and perhaps in time they would guide her to the love and family she yearned for. Chapter 3. Rhymes of Revelation. As dawn touched the world with fingers of light, an unexpected visitor broke the forest's usual rhythm. A wanderer, lost in the labyrinth of nature, stumbled upon the enchantress's sanctuary. The forest creatures watched warily, their eyes tracing the intruder's movement towards the enchantress's humble hut. Inside the dwelling, the enchantress sensed the newcomer. The forest whispered the tale of the lost wanderer, its voice carried by the rustling leaves, the murmuring brooks, and the nervous flutter of the birds. A touch of surprise graced her features, soon replaced by a serene smile. She had expected this day, foreseen it through her poetic prophecies. The universe had responded to her yearning. The wanderer approached the dwelling, drawn by a mysterious force he couldn't explain. In this serene spot, the world seemed different, ethereal. Then he saw her, the Enchantress. Her aura was a cascade of serenity and power, her eyes holding an ocean of unspoken tales. To welcome the wanderer, the Enchantress began to recite her verses, a warm breeze carrying her words to him. Her rhymes were a soothing balm to his weary spirit, the rhythm mirroring his heartbeat. He felt an inexplicable sense of peace envelop him, the words weaving an invisible bond between them. "Thou art a guest, drawn by fate's design," she began, her voice melodious, imbued with an inviting warmth. "Come, partake in this home of mine, where magic breathes in every pine." The forest listened to her words, responding to her poetry spells. The earth beneath the wanderer's feet felt softer, the breeze carried a welcoming warmth, and the leaves rustled, creating a symphony that resonated with the Enchantress's verses. Even the usually shy creatures approached him, their eyes reflecting the welcoming spirit of the Enchantress's words. The wanderer was astonished. The Enchantress's hospitality was unlike anything he'd ever encountered, her magic touching his heart, her verses lulling his worries. He couldn't help but be enchanted, drawn to the woman who conversed with the moon and whispered to the forest. Through the Enchantress's welcoming verses, readers witnessed the extent of her power. Her magic was not limited to conjuring extraordinary feats, but in her ability to touch hearts, to share her serenity, and to let others see the beauty of her magical world. As the day settled into the comforting arms of dusk, the wanderer found himself captivated by the Enchantress and her realm. Her abode, once foreign, now felt welcoming. Her magic now a soothing hymn he yearned to understand. And the Enchantress, in the company of her unexpected guest, felt a flicker of hope light up her heart, her rhymes of revelation opening a door to new possibilities. Chapter 4. Sonnets of Sorrow. Days turned into weeks, the sun rising and setting over the symphony of the forest, the moon tracing its silvery arc across the night sky. The wanderer remained, his presence subtly altering the rhythm of the Enchantress's solitude. In his company, the Enchantress found a connection she hadn't realized she yearned for, a companionship that echoed her deepest desires. However, with this newfound connection came a torrent of emotions, as wild and untamed as the forest itself. Love was a concept the Enchantress knew of, but experiencing it was akin to navigating through an uncharted territory. A flicker of hope ignited within her, a hope for shared dreams and whispered secrets. Yet there was fear, too, a silent specter lurking in the shadows. Could she allow herself this vulnerability, risk the solitude she had become so accustomed to? In her moments of introspection, the Enchantress sought solace in her poetry, her words capturing the whirlwind of emotions raging within her. Sitting beneath her ancient tree, she began her poetic journey, weaving sonnets of sorrow and joy, fear and hope. She began, "Beneath the azure sky my heart doth rove, a wanderer in the realm of love. Dreams awake within my slumbering core, yet fear doth lurk on this untrodden shore." Her words resonated with her inner turmoil. The enchantments she cast reflected the shades of her heart, the forest mirroring her emotions. The wind whispered softer, the brooks flowed quieter, and even the birds seemed to hold their breath as her verses echoed through the silent air. Through her poetic exploration, the Enchantress attempted to understand her burgeoning feelings. She explored the joy of companionship, the solace in shared silence, and the thrill of an emerging affection. Yet she also confronted her fears, the possibility of heartbreak, the risk of disrupting her tranquil existence, and the fear of losing herself in this newfound emotion. As the Enchantress navigated her emotional labyrinth, readers get a glimpse of her raw vulnerability. Behind her magical exterior lay a woman experiencing love for the first time, grappling with its complexities and cherishing its joys. The Sonnets of Sorrow marked a significant chapter in her life, an emotional revelation cloaked in the cadence of her poetic spells. Through the verses, she navigated her fears, celebrated her hopes, and accepted her feelings, preparing herself for whatever the future had in store. In her poetry, she found the courage to embrace this new chapter of her life, the strength to welcome love, and the faith to trust in her destiny. Chapter 5. Ballads of Blossoming Love. As the weeks passed, a silent understanding grew between the enchantress and the wanderer. They shared tales by the warm fireplace, meals beneath the shade of the ancient tree, and silent gazes under the watchful eye of the moon. In these shared moments, they discovered pieces of each other, their connections strengthening with each passing day. The enchantress, however, found words failing her when it came to expressing her feelings directly to the wanderer. Instead, she turned to her poetry spells, her magical verses becoming a conduit for her emotions. Her poetry, subtly laced with affection, led to shared moments that were nothing short of enchantment. One evening, as twilight spread its violet hue, she recited a spell, her voice ringing clear and melodious. Beneath the moon's silver glow, let hearts intertwine, let feelings flow. May the wind carry whispers of my heart's song to you who've been here all along. The forest responded to her enchantment, the surroundings taking on an ethereal quality. Fireflies danced in intricate patterns, their soft light painting a tableau of their emerging affection. A soft breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the enchantress's unspoken feelings to the wanderer. The wanderer felt a warmth envelop him, the enchantress's enchantment resonating